At my brother's wedding, I found my name scribbled on a napkin by the kids' table. His new wife smirked, "We thought you'd be low maintenance." Then I noticed they'd opened my $6,000 check, so I smiled, took it back, and watched her face drop. "Hey, I'm Evan, and I'm 31. I'm not exactly the flashy type or someone who craves the spotlight. I've always been the kind of guy who shows up, helps out when needed, and then stays out of the way. I'm not rolling in dough, but over the last few years, I've quietly built a nice little freelance business, lived simply, and saved money like it was going out of style. So, when my younger bro, Ryan, announced he was getting married, I figured, alright, time to step up for family. I didn't expect any fanfare or even much appreciation, but I definitely wasn't ready to be treated like a nobody. Ryan's always been the golden boy. Growing up, he got away with everything, sneaking out, crashing dad's old car, you name it, while I got in trouble for setting a bad example. Even when he dropped out of college for the second time, my parents still beamed at him over dinner. And there I was, quietly paying off my student loans with 2 jobs, being told I should be more supportive. So yeah, I've kind of accepted that family dynamics don't exactly work in my favor. I thought maybe the wedding could change things up a bit. I even offered to help with some costs when I heard money was tight. I suggested a pretty generous gift, $6,000, without expecting a parade. I just wanted to be part of it and thought weddings are expensive, after all. The big day was last Saturday at this beautiful vineyard about an hour from the city. Imagine rolling hills, fairy lights in the trees, and a jazz band near the fountain. Totally something out of a magazine. I got there early, looking sharp in my freshly cleaned navy suit, envelope safely tucked away in my pocket. I even brought a small framed picture of our late grandma to leave at the reception because she always said I had the softest heart in the family. Then, when I went to check the seating chart, my first moment of embarrassment hit. My name wasn't on the elegant list with the gold leaf accents. Thinking it was a mistake, I asked one of the planners. She took me to a side table near the coat room. And there it was, my name scrawled in ballpoint pen on a cocktail napkin. No table number, just Evan, kids section. I was stunned, thinking maybe it was a joke. Following the arrow brought me to a tiny table near the kitchen's exit, where kids were dropping crayons into their juice. I even paused, hoping Ryan would pop out and say it was all a prank. Nope. Instead, Ryan's new wife, Tessa, came over and greeted me like we were at a casual meet and greet. When I asked why they thought I might not come, she mentioned I'm the kind of guy who keeps to himself and would be okay with something low-key. Being placed at the kids' table though? She didn't even flinch, saying it was a last-minute thing. I just nodded, sat down, and tried to ignore the applesauce that immediately landed on my pants. Then I noticed something odd. My gift envelope was on the table of gifts, already opened. The check, with "Congrats Ryan" and Tessa written on it, was gone. With Tessa casually chatting and laughing with her bridesmaids, I quietly approached her about it. She said Ryan's mom organized the gifts early for convenience. When she realized I wanted my check back, her smile dropped. I didn't argue, just calmly took the envelope, slipped it back into my pocket, and walked away, hearing her mutter to her friends as I left. So, the words were familiar, but the sharp, mocking tone really hit home. I felt my face heat up, and I tried convincing myself I didn't care what these people thought of me. But deep down, I did care. I wasn't just some random name on a napkin. I was the guy who shelled out $6,000 with no strings attached, arrived early, brought a photo of grandma, and even wore a suit even though I absolutely detest suits, all to end up sitting next to a kid with a sippy cup. Suddenly, I was the bad guy for not playing along with their little games. I needed a break, so I stepped outside. Standing at the edge of the vineyard, I watched guests snap pictures and laugh. Behind me, the band started playing a Frank Sinatra song, making everything look picture perfect, except for the fact that I didn't feel like I belonged in that picture. Right then, I realized I had more to say and do, and this night wasn't over for any of us. I stood there, holding a torn envelope, staring at the rolling hills, feeling like I was in a cheesy soap opera. But this was real life. It was me, Evan, being treated like an afterthought by folks who hadn't earned the right to tease me, let alone mock the gesture I'd made. I needed to clear my head, so I stood listening to the crowd, glasses clinking, bits of conversation floating my way. Someone was grumbling about the fancy appetizers, and I heard my aunts laugh, which I never liked as a kid. Everyone was playing their part in Ryan and Tessa's perfect wedding day, while I was stuck at the back with energetic kids, pretending I wasn't simmering inside. After a few minutes, my cousin Jordan, the one family member I still liked, found me. He loosened his tie and handed me a drink, saying, "Here, take this. You look like you're planning a murder." I managed a weak smile. Not murder, just some quiet reevaluation. He noticed the envelope in my hand and asked, "Did they really already open it?" I nodded and added, "And they stuck me with the kids." Jordan shook his head, understanding without defending them. That's why I liked him. He didn't give me the usual "it's their big day" excuses. Instead, he stood there, sipping his drink in silence, and then said something that stuck with me: "They wouldn't treat you like this if they didn't think you'd take it." I looked at him surprised, and he added, "You're the nice one who always shows up without making a fuss. People like that are easy to overlook until they stop going along." I thought about his words as we watched the ceremony from a distance. I chose to stand by a tree instead of sitting with the family, observing as Ryan fidgeted with his cuffs and Tessa beamed. During the vows and applause, I kept thinking about how my silence had become my brand, my low expectations a free pass for them to disrespect me. As everyone moved to the reception tent with fairy lights twinkling and the DJ setting up, I wasn't in the mood for speeches or food. I just wanted to prove I wasn't dumb or soft but without making a scene. So, I decided to handle it my way, quietly and strategically. I took out my phone and called Adam, my bank guy. See, what Ryan and Tessa didn't know was that the check I gave them was not just a generous gift but a test to see how they'd act with something valuable when they thought no one was watching. I'd already told Adam to stop the payment if anything shady happened, and this definitely qualified. I stepped away from the crowd and made the call. "Hey, remember that wedding check?" I asked Adam. "Go ahead and cancel it." He paused, then replied, "You sure? It was a big one." I confirmed, and he didn't ask for more details. "Done," he said, promising a confirmation email soon. I slipped my phone back in my pocket just as Ryan, who hadn't even acknowledged me all evening, walked by with a glass of champagne. He didn't give me a handshake, a hug, or even a "thanks for coming," just brushed past me like I didn't exist. I watched him laugh with friends from his gym, probably people who didn't even know my name. So there I was, sitting at this family gathering, thinking about how many times I'd bailed Ryan out. I mean, I'd covered his share of the rent when we were younger, picked him up from parties when he was too wasted to drive, and kept quiet when mom and dad seemed to bend over backward for him while I had to figure stuff out on my own. I was seriously done playing nice. Dinner rolled around, and I went back to my seat to half-heartedly poke at this lukewarm chicken. There's this 6-year-old next to me wiping his nose with the tablecloth. Yeah, classy scene. Nobody from the main family table even acknowledged me, no toasts, no thank yous, nada. Honestly, I might as well have been one of the waiters. When the DJ announced, "Let's get the whole family on the dance floor," I got up, strolled over to the gift table, and quietly took back my framed photo of Grandma. I tucked it under my arm and made my way outside without saying anything. I hadn't gone far when I heard Tessa shout, "Evan, wait, what are you doing?" I stopped but didn't turn around. She told me I couldn't just take stuff from the gift table. I slowly turned around, raising the frame. "This belonged to me," I replied. She looked confused and said, "Oh, well, okay, but you're acting weird. Did something happen?" I tilted my head slightly. "You tell me," I said. Her smile faltered, and she tried to laugh it off, saying the seating arrangement was just logistics and how generous my gift was. "We already deposited it," she said, trying to smooth things over. "No," I interrupted quietly. "You didn't," I told her I'd cancelled it. Her smile twitched and fell. "Wait, you're serious?" she asked. I looked her straight in the eye and said, "I was never in the plan, remember? Just being low maintenance." And with that, I headed back to my car, leaving behind the fairy-lit vineyard and all the music, while she stood there empty-handed. But the real impact was yet to come because it wasn't just the check I'd withdrawn from their lives. I drove away slowly, letting the wind cool off the anger that had been simmering all night. Oddly enough, I felt calm, leaving that wedding behind. It wasn't just about the $6,000, it was about realizing how much they took me for granted, Ryan, Tessa, everyone. My parents didn't even bother to check if I'd arrived, and nobody noticed I was sitting with the kids. They just expected I'd always be there to give without ever saying enough. The next morning, my phone was buzzing like crazy with messages. Most were from the group chat Ryan set up for the wedding. While some posts were congratulatory, one from Tessa stood out, mentioning some technical issue with a wedding check. My aunt and uncle chimed in, asking if it was my check that went missing, noting how generous I'd been. Tessa assured everyone they'd sort it out, brushing over it like no big deal. Ryan later texted me directly, not even bothering to thank me for coming, just jumping to the topic of the money. I ignored it. An hour later, he was back, asking me to call him because, apparently, they'd already made plans based on the money. I tossed my phone aside, letting it ring out because they couldn't see the bigger picture. You see, it wasn't just about the check. When our parents retired, they didn't have much saved. They downsized, and Ryan moved into this fancy downtown apartment he couldn't afford. So, like the nice older brother, I co-signed his lease when he called asking for help. I'd been covering half his rent ever since. It was supposed to be a temporary 3-month thing, but it stretched to a year because I didn't want to be that brother that said no. But now, I was over it. I went online, filled out the form to remove myself as a co-signer from the lease, attached the rental statements, credit history, and a written request. Since I'd been paying most of the rent, it was a quick process. In just 48 hours, Ryan would get notified that the rent responsibility was all his. And there I was, finally done with it all. So, I started cutting ties, bit by bit. There were all these little things I realized were still connecting me to his life, stuff he probably never even noticed. It was like unraveling a sweater one thread at a time. I canceled the streaming services he used from my account, including our Spotify family plan. We were even still on the same car insurance. Oh, and our shared Costco membership? Gone. I did all this in complete silence, which was a first for me. But it wasn't because I was weak, this time it was like performing a careful surgery. By Monday, my phone was blowing up with messages. Ryan was freaking out, asking, "Dude, rent bounced. What's up?" And then he mentioned getting an email about the lease being under review, wondering if I took my name off it. Then Tessa chimed in, saying, "This is getting petty, don't you think?" And that the rent check thing was just a misunderstanding. She acted like I was making a mountain out of a molehill. And it was that line, for no reason, that really hit me. It wasn't an apology or an acknowledgement of any wrongdoing, it was just this passive-aggressive nudge like my whole reaction was over the top. I didn't bother replying. I just dumped all their messages into a folder I named Closure. But I knew it wasn't over. The next morning, my mom called. A few times, actually. I finally picked up out of curiosity. She sounded worried and asked what was going on. Ryan had apparently called her in a panic because I stopped financially supporting him. She wanted to know what happened at the wedding. I told her calmly, "You raised 2 sons and only one of them ever learned how to stand on his own." She said that was cruel, reminding me Ryan's had it tough and Tessa might have just been nervous. But come on, she seated me with kids at the wedding and opened my gift before I even showed up. My mom said I was maybe being extreme, but I pointed out I've been his financial safety net for 3 years without a simple, "Thank you." There was a long pause before she said she wished I wouldn't make things harder than they need to be. I laughed dryly, saying, "You mean like not being the guy who pays for everything but gets ignored at his brother's wedding?" She seemed softer then, admitting she didn't know all that. When I said they never bothered to ask, she went silent. I told her I was done being the silent supporter and dealing with guilt trips. I wasn't going nuclear, I was just done. She whispered she understood, but who knows if she meant it. After hanging up, I didn't feel angry or triumphant, just clear, like a weight had been lifted after years. But that clarity didn't last long because 2 days later, Tessa showed up at my office. She walked in like she owned the place, looking all put together and polished. Our receptionist, Lacey, gave me a wide-eyed look, mouthing, "Is that her?" I just nodded and got up. Tessa came in all sweet, wanting to clear the air, pretending like this whole ordeal got out of hand without saying she was sorry. She acted like she was talking to a kid who didn't understand, suggesting I was hurt by the seating arrangements at the wedding, which she claimed was nothing personal. I leaned in, mentioning again how she wrote my name on a napkin. She said it was an honest mistake, and when I brought up her opening my gift early, she blamed my mom. She quickly shifted the blame, saying Ryan was stressed because I pulled the financial rug from under him without warning, conveniently forgetting the years of warnings I had given. She accused me of punishing Ryan for being the favorite. I just stared at her, thinking we must live in totally different worlds. Then she suggested I didn't need the money since I'm single with no kids, like that justified everything. "So, you're working from home, and you don't even have a mortgage. What's the deal with hoarding all that cash? Saving it just to prove a point, huh?" That's when I caught it, a quick slip of the mask. She had that smug tilt to her chin, and her voice was all icy and calculated. It wasn't about fixing stuff, it was about having control. I let out a slow, dry laugh. "You really think I owe you something, huh? Like I'm just a backup donor for your picture-perfect life? Just because I'm quiet, because I don't make a fuss, you think I'm your financial safety net? The guy you rely on when Ryan spends too much and you need to keep your Instagram life on point?" Her smile wavered, but I kept going. "You opened my gift before I even showed up at your wedding. Sat me next to some kid who used the tablecloth as a tissue. Didn't speak to me all night unless it was about money. And now, just because your backup plan has grown a spine, you walk into my office trying to pass it off as a misunderstanding. Tessa just stared. For once, she was out of words. You married Ryan, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. That means you took on his debts, his bad habits, and his entitlement. Good luck with that, but I'm done bankrolling it. I'm not your low-key donor, I'm your brother-in-law, and from now on, I'm just a ghost. She stood up super slowly, deliberately. You'll regret this, she said. I tilted my head. Only if I forget why I started. She left without saying anything else. The fallout was fast. Ryan called me that night, no more passive-aggressive texts. This time, it was raw, angry. You made me look like an idiot in front of the whole family, he yelled over the phone. I didn't make you do anything, I replied, trying to stay calm. You did that to yourself. I just stopped letting you use me. We're brothers, Evan, he snapped. You think family just cuts each other off because of one bad night? I paused. It wasn't one night. It was years of being invisible until you needed something. Years of cleaning up your messes, co-signing your leases, funding your lifestyle. And the first time I needed a seat at the table, you handed me a napkin. You're overreacting, he said. No, I replied. I'm reacting appropriately for the first time in my life. He hung up. I braced for more family blowback, and it came in waves. My dad called me dramatic, my mom begged me to apologize and be the bigger person, and even my uncle left a long voicemail about moving past grudges. But no one asked how I felt. Not once did anyone say, "Are you okay?" Or "Did that hurt you?" Or "We're sorry we didn't notice." It was always, "Fix this," or "Let it go," or "Don't destroy the family over money." So, I sent one group text, "This isn't about money. It's about respect. I've been giving for years, and I've finally realized I was only appreciated for what I could offer, not who I am. I'm stepping back not out of spite, but out of self-respect. I wish you all well, but I'm done being the ghost at your table." Then, I left the group, blocked a few numbers, and silenced the rest. For the first few days, the silence was tough. It felt heavy when you're used to being the quiet helper in a noisy room. But slowly, things started to change. I felt lighter, slept better, my work improved. I reconnected with old friends. I even took a weekend trip to the mountains, something I'd always put off because someone in the family always needed me more. Weeks went by, then a month, and slowly the noise faded. No more calls, no more guilt trips, no more being shoved to the side with a napkin. Then, out of the blue, Jordan texted me, "Guess who's selling their designer couch on Facebook Marketplace?" I laughed out loud. And it wasn't a bitter laugh. It wasn't smug. It was just freeing. I never went back to that family dynamic. I never resumed the payments, and I never went to another holiday gathering where I was just the background ATM. I never let myself be treated like I didn't belong, especially by people who only noticed me when my wallet showed up before I did. Because here's what I learned: respect isn't earned by being quiet and helpful. It's something you demand by walking away when it's denied. And sometimes, the quietest revenge is just letting that check bounce, enjoying the silence after finally speaking up, and the sound of tearing up that metaphorical napkin. If you haven't yet, please subscribe. And hit the notification bell to stay updated with more crazy real-life stories happening around you.